Let me just say, wow, what a piece of art. First, you had Dracula, well, Nosferatu Dracula, and you have Vampyr.
Is it just me? Or is it getting crazier out there?
Hey everybody, welcome to Late Late Horror Show. I'm Dino, and yes, wow, this is going to be an interesting one to dissect because how you interpret this film, as somebody was saying in there in the chat, being a film student, kind of dissecting the film, breaking it down. It's like, how do you do that with art, just like a work of art? I mean, in this film is a work of art. Like I said, you have Dracula, you have Nosferatu, and you have this story, Vampyr, which just it's a cult classic now. I just look at it as a work of art. It's filled with all kinds of surrealism, like Edward Stewart said, dreamlike state, being very suggestive, German expressionism, but it's also very unnerving. It's first of the talkies for the German films, and it was directed by Carl Theodor Dreyer, who is a Danish director, but it was a German-French production. So they were going for, let's get different languages on this film. Let's dub it afterwards, send it off to the different countries, which they did. They did, thus leading to different versions, dubbed versions, and everything. But when you come down to it, and Carl Theodor Dreyer is also known right before this in 1928 for The Passion of Joan of Arc. I mean, big praise for that film. I mean, people were looking at him as, wow, this is the director. But when this film came out, it kind of flopped. Thank God it wasn't lost, and we still have it in various forms. Hello to everybody in the chat: Connie Clary, Edward Stewart, Justin. What is going on? Donovan Belair, Ed Stathis. What is going on? Let's see who else is here. Black Roses is here. Good to see everybody here today. Listen, I don't, this should definitely, everybody should watch this. If you're into art, if you appreciate art for what it is, you should see this film. It's also, even though, like I said, it's a film that is technically a talkie, but on the other hand, it's really just a silent film with dubbed, I think, like 22 lines, and they're very short in the entire film, just very short lines. There is a score, one of the first films back in the day to really kind of use a full-on score for a film like this. And the sound effects were fantastic. It was a limited budget. It was financed by the lead actor in this because he said, hey, I got the money. You want to finance it? I have it. Julian West was the name he went by as the actor in this, but he was a very influential banker type. He uses influence and his money to play the lead role in this, and he plays Alan Gray. Others have said David Gray because translation, but it's Alan Gray. And and Paul Hamm. Hey, what's going on, Paul Hamm? It is pretty unique. Exactly. I think everybody can look at this film and gets a little bit of something out of it, and a different version of what they think the ending is or whatever. But when it comes down to it, they're just telling a story of vampires. I mean, that's basically it. What he ended up doing, he was a big fan of the author J. Sheridan Le Fanu. If you look this author up, you will see a list of the books, most notably Carmilla. But they took the two books, Carmilla and The Room in the Dragon Volant. Sorry. They took those two, kind of smushed them together, came up with this kind of screenplay. Again, being very artsy. It's a very surreal, dreamlike state. The whole, they even put gauze over the lens. The techniques they used for this film, lots of camera movements, gauze over the camera to give it that eerie type. They didn't need that, but it kind of worked. You know what I mean? But they put this together through those two films. So this vampire tale isn't from Bram Stoker, isn't, it's something all of its own. You know what I mean? So that's kind of why I said Dracula, Nosferatu. You got this. Technically, Dracula was being filmed the same time this one was, but yet this one came out a year later because of difficulties with funding. And once they shot it all in one location in France, they shipped it off to Germany, where they would start doing all the dubbing for English, French, German, all of that. So that's why you get the different versions that they do. Making sure. Hey, CM, what is going on? Good evening. Yeah, I'm a little jazzed up for this movie because, man, this was a pleasant surprise, and I loved watching this. Hey, Kathy, what is going on? Good to see you. Wait, what was that? Is this a Fritz Lang movie? No. This is not a Fritz Lang movie. This is Carl Theodore Dreyer, who directed and took inspiration from the stories of J. Sheridan Le Fanu. And it's interesting too because this movie, hey Ian Sharp, what's going on? They did an excellent job cleaning up the film on DVD compared to mine, shot off 16 millimeter. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's available on YouTube. Criterion took care of that and did Janus Films and did a wonderful job at restoring what they had, and it's just beautiful. I don't know what more to say. I am going to get into storyline and other things that in the film were very interesting, but I'd say when you come out after you watch this film, if you're not into the surrealism, the art, the German expressionism, or just the mind of somebody who's just putting a story out there that could be just like this whole nightmare, just trying to creep you out, this is it. This is it. There's even excerpts from a book that you're basically telling you a story throughout this film with the pages and stuff, but very eerie, very unnerving, very creepy. I love the film, man. I love it. Let's see. Criterion print is fantastic. One of a kind and overlooked for many years. Yes, Paul Ham. Something about it. Love. Yes, Edward. And Paul Ham. Yes, overlooked for many years. At the time, people were coming out of the theater laughing or way too terrified or scared, and it just did not gain traction at the time for some odd reason, because many years later we now look at it, maybe because we're exposed to a lot more art and we understand through being raised through our art classes or even through college and learning about the different aspects of art and German expressionism and surrealism and all the stuff that you can ways you can make film. And they were tinkering with that a lot here. And man, when it comes down to it, there is a lot of things. A lot of people say this film is very slow paced. Art I think when it comes to art and films like this, it doesn't matter if it's slow paced. And I didn't think so, because even the slow pacing at moments, it's they're trying to create an unnerving feeling in you, is what they were going for. It deals with vampires, it deals with death, and the lore, and they want to unnerve you. They want to make you feel scared, and that's what they did, you know? And I think people were coming out of the, theaters at the time, and they were expecting, this hardcore plot, to mean something. And, you know, it's everything was experimental. Listen, the beginning years of filmmaking, just everything was experimental. They worked on uh, how can they get a story across? How can they scare? They heard about this, Dracula, and how it was working on stage, and there was even a film in the process while they were filming this. But yeah, it's just unbelievable. There's shadow work that goes. The way he uses what money he had to shoot to scare you, by basically shadows and, not special effects, but just the shot location. It's just everything just worked perfectly. YouTube does have it. HBO does, Netflix or whatever. I also have different wording in my version, I notice as well. Professor Strangefinger, what's going on? Talking about a fantastic film here. Paul Ham, the whole thing is like a nightmare. Exactly, 100%. It is 100% supposed to be a nightmare. And I think the all of the actors and actresses in this too, it's really their first time on camera, especially the guy that financed it, who plays Alan Gray, the main character, who, with his dark, slicked back hair and his um, 1920s gangster kind of look. I forget what actor I'm thinking of, but he played Scarface. Who is that actor? But nevertheless, he just adds this presence, and because he wasn't a real actor until this film, he kind of moved about slowly, and there was just something to everything. And even though it's a talkie, you can still say it's a silent. And because it's a silent, you still get a lot of the expressions in the faces of all the actors and the actresses, of trying to emote their what they're feeling. And he does it fantastically. I mean, from the very beginning, he's basically this drifter who wanders into this village of sorts, a village of sorts, and comes to stay in a home there, uh, where weird things are going on. You see this old man who looks like, it trips me out, who looks like Einstein, pretty much. He looks like Einstein, and he's the doctor. He's the old doctor in the village, and long white hair, and he's very creepy. They don't look, they don't say nothing, but they're moving about. You can tell there are a couple servants of the vampire, which we'll get to that too. Which, very interestingly, you don't see the vampire in this film all that often at all. Maybe only a couple times, maybe 5 minutes in the entire movie. But when you see the vampire, you're like, see, they weren't going for what Nosferatu was going for, with the monstrous, creature, or Dracula with the sophisticated monster, who can steal the hearts of women, or entrance. This is just a vampire, a woman, an old white-haired woman in a long dress, who appears at times and takes blood of, especially the character Leone. Leone is one of the daughters of the lord of the manor, who is, I think, is the father of the two girls. But Leone, who is the girl who is basically like Lucy, she's the one getting bit, draining of the blood and becoming weak. And she's on the cover of a lot of pictures you see because there's a scene in the film. Listen, she's very scary. She reminded me of what's her name in Pet Cemetery, at lying in the bed. You know, when she had that meningococcal whatever and turns around. She reminds me of The Exorcist a little bit when her facial expressions are just so out there and turning around. She slowly turns as her sister is behind her, Giselle, walking behind her. Giselle, a very beautiful actress in this film. Just, beautiful face, but got the expressions, emoting the terror, walking behind her. And she does this kind of Leone creepy turnaround. And it's a slow camera movement of her face as she's turning to look at. This is what I love about some silent films. They had to do everything through the face and the camera work. And it shows even in this that, what you can create just by shooting and expressions alone, no sound, no voice, no nothing. It's just unbelievable. I don't mean to ignore you guys in the chat. I'm just so excited about this film. I'm going on and on and on. When filmmaking was a new thing, people got creative. Yes, yes, yes. It also shows in The Bat Whispers, a very early mystery film that people should see. That's another one. Adam for Christ, hello, good to see you. That whole scene with Leone and the sisters, so well filmed. Oh God, yes. Again, Theodore Dreyer is such a great director, and it shows in this film. Everything he gets across just puts you in this kind of mood. Look at the current state of things, Professor. When filmmaking was, yeah. Listen, we're talking old school here. We're not talking. I don't even want to go there. One cool part in my version is when David Gray. Oh, you're calling him David Gray. I call him Alan Gray. IMDb's got him listed as Alan Gray, but there were a couple versions when they translated over to the English that David got put in there. But the original script calls for Alan Gray as the character's name. So David Allen, doesn't really matter. Says, "Who are you?" And the guy, oh yeah, no, I know. I'm going to say that, Edward Stewart. That's something I definitely. When Alan Gray gets to the Drifter, gets to where he's going to sleep for the night, you can tell the villagers are. So, and there's not many, but the people of the house, they close windows, the doors. But a young girl comes out and gets him, takes him to a room, and that's where he like pulls the shade. He's in the bedroom, and every movement they do is just I can't. This is a movie you have to see it to appreciate it. I can go on and on and on about this film, but to see it is how you're going to appreciate it. Something this old, something this surreal, and you have to see it to believe it. But the girl gives him his room, and then he's getting ready to go to sleep after he sees a couple characters and shadows in the hallway. Thought he heard a child crying. Even thought he heard dogs, but they said, "I don't hear dogs. I don't hear a child." So very, very spooky stuff. He's going to sleep, and in comes the Lord of the Manor, who's the Lord of the other house. So, what, very interesting. He comes in, he's an old man, he's in his robe. He comes into his room. He just comes into his room. And as he does, slowly, because it's kind of like a silent, slowly he works his way over to him, Alan Gray. But before he does, there's a book, there's something wrapped in paper, and he's got it wrapped, and he writes on it, "Don't open till my death." So there is that, and he leaves it there in his room, in Alan Gray's room. And he looks around to Alan Gray, when Alan Gray, like Edward says, "What are you doing here?" You know, he turns around to him and he goes, "She must not die. You understand?" And then leaves. And it's like, but it was such an eerie thing to say and scary. And he turns away, walks away, and it's just amazing. It was just so creepy. And there's also hidden skulls in most of the scenes. Like you'll see a skull in the background somewhere on the table. There's hidden skulls throughout the movie. You can look for that. Also, an interesting concept of the hidden doors in this the manor, like rugs and tapestries hung over, and they open it and you don't even know that that's a room. It's just things are made to confuse you, to take you away from what you think is going on. And that's the unnerving effect this has kind of on you. Hopefully most of you guys that are here appreciate the film and like the old stuff, but whatever. Dino, have you seen the Phantom Carriage? It's fantastic. I have not seen the Phantom Carriage yet. I really haven't. I guess one I need to watch for sure. But again, there's also, okay, so he goes back, he wanders around the next day, the night, whatever, Alan Gray, and he sees somebody shoot at the Lord of the Manor and kill him. It's a slow death. He's inside the house, and Alan Gray tries to get in, and he can't get in. And the Lord of the Manor, that old guy that we seen at the beginning with what's going to be a book, ends up dying, which has Alan Gray open it up. Meanwhile, there's servants going around, and Leon's up in the bed. She's sick. She's been bitten. She's being drained of blood. The doctor keeps coming. It's your typical like vampire story where the doctor comes. She's being drained of blood. Nothing's going to help unless you get rid of the vampire. But there's this, and he's introduced to the sister, Giselle, who isn't being, she isn't struck with the illness yet. She hasn't been taken, but he's going after Leon. Well, she's going after Leon because we take it as this vampire, which I'll get to. This old woman is the vampire who's coming and draining her of the blood. Or people have also interpreted it as the old doctor, the creepy guy who keeps giving transfusions to her, but in draining her of blood, but there are marks on the neck. So is it the old vampire? Yes, we're to assume that it is. But the other very cool thing is about the book. Once he opens the book and the guy dies, he opens the book and he starts to read it. And this is where the storytelling kind of throughout the movie is also cool. And I've got it here because I wanted to read the excerpts that went up on the screen, because it tells the vampire story in a little bit of a different way. And it's just so interesting. Lands tell of terrible demons called vampires. These are the bodies and souls of the dead, whose terrible deeds in life deny them repose in the grave. Under the bright light of the full moon, they rise from their graves to suck the blood of children and young adults. I thought that was interesting that the book that they're reading is Information on Vampirism, speaks of them sucking the blood of children and young adults. We go soon after that, in vampire lore, even Dracula. It doesn't really matter who they're sucking the blood of, but just very interesting. Prolong their shadowy existence. The Prince of Darkness is their ally and lends them supernatural power among living and the dead. And I got a couple other ones here. I want to read the passages as I go along here because they're so interesting, and the movie's just so well done. WTF horror and sci-fi. Hi all. I have always been fascinated by this movie. We should call it film, not movie. Let's go back. Let's go back to the 30s. This film. I'm fascinated by this. Never sat down to watch the whole thing from start to finish. WTF? What the hell? It's an hour and 14 minutes. Start it and don't leave your position until it's over. Until it's over, because it's fantastic. Let's see. I probably didn't miss anything because I'm going on and on and on and on. But yeah, so getting on with this, I mean, those are basically the characters in the movie, in the film. See, I did it, WTF. I said movie, film. This is film. But yeah, so there's this thing that goes on throughout most of the movie when Alan Gray's wandering the grounds. He ends up seeing shadows everywhere. So we're to take it that shadows are part of the like in Nosferatu, or even like in Full Moon, Blood Species, the vampire, Radu, the shadows kind of wander around even when the vampire, you can't see it, so they can come in shadow form, but there are shadows thrown about just to give you a creepy, eerie feeling. I mean, it's just, it's just so well done. And you end up seeing that all along the grounds. And again, the special effects are just amazing too. We are seeing at one point the old woman vampire being led by the doctor and acting like can't see, feeble, but it's not the case. I think just putting on a persona, but definitely very cool. And there's an excerpt right after that where the father, or not the father, but one of the servants who seems to act as a father, starts reading the book. And he starts reading it also. But the next excerpt that they put up on the screen is, at night, those creatures from the abyss seek out the abodes of the living, where they sow death and destruction. The victim who falls prey to a vampire's spell is doomed to perish without hope. A wound in the throat, in appearance similar to that received by the bite of a cat or a rat, is the mark of damnation, which they point out that the person being bitten will be eternally in hell, whatever, the soul damned. I thought that was interesting too, because I guess as long as they're turned. But I didn't finish my point with the doctor who comes in and gives the transfusions, everything. There's a point where she's about ready to die, and I think the doctor and the vampire wants her to die to maybe become another vampire. But there's a little vial of poison on the side that they set to Leon, the doctor does, and she gets ready to take the poison to try to kill herself. And Alan gets in there just in the nick of time and takes it from her, and she doesn't kill herself. But I tell you, they certainly make you think throughout this film. And again, how he does this film, the way he does it, it's so interesting. And there's also this thing with people, the characters. There's this peg leg guy who sits down. He's not the only one, but the shadows of the people seem to get up and walk away. Why that is, I don't know, but it adds to just the surreal, dreamlike part of this film. The guy with the peg leg, who I believe to be a servant of the vampire, him and the doctor. The shadow gets up, walks away, does something. Later on, it's going to happen to Alan Gray as well. There is also a carriage with the rider who goes off, and he comes back and he's dead. He's got the blood sucked out from him. So anybody who ventures off from the manor is most likely going to die from the vampire. It won't let you. I don't know how the drifter got in, but we needed that main character, right? So anyways, let me get to what you guys are saying here. The lore of this film refers more to the old world myths of vampirism in Europe. Yes, Paul Ham, exactly. Edward Stewart, when Alan sees the old woman for the first time, Alan goes running away. The old vampire woman says, the soldier with the wooden leg, where is he? In my version, noticed it was different. And the vampire woman biting Leon on the rock in classic, my version, has an extra scene where she's peeking out of the bushes and walking towards the woods. Okay, gotcha. Different scenes added in there. WTF, I got a photographer friend who refuses to call a movie film because that's for photographs. Seriously, WTF. Does he know the reference of film when film first began? Like, not just the cameras, but once moving pictures took place, they were pictures, snapshots of scenes over and over again. That's how film is. It's film. It's a roll of film. So listen, that's your friend, but I think he's totally wrong with that reference. That's for sure. Let's see. It's almost like they are considered doomed because they have been infected by a plague. Yeah, I guess you can look at it that way. Hey, Ryan, what's going on? Can't believe I've never seen this movie. Oh, you got to. If you love the old stuff and the black and white, and if you just like art and German expressionism, surrealism, all of that good stuff, then this is going to be fantastic for you. Yeah, I mean, I'm at a loss for words almost for this film because it's that good. It should be on canvas, is what it should be, and it's just so fantastic. The next excerpt. The ghosts of the executed criminals are in their service, yet the living too may fall under their dreadful sway. An account from Hungary tells the story of a doctor in a country village who, having sold his soul to the evil one, which you would think that's the devil, selling your soul to the devil, they could be referring to a vampire, became a vampire's henchman, and in so doing was rendered an accessory to a whole series of horrid crimes in that region of the country. Once the vampire senses that the victim is completely within his grasp, it does everything within the power to drive the victim to the act of suicide, thus the poison being next to Leon's bed. Again, things were a little bit different in this kind of vampire lore here. For the man who dies at his own hand is lost for all eternity. To such a man, the golden gates of heaven are closed. Wow. So there you go. I mean, the vampire in this film version is evil, pure on evil, wanting that victim to commit suicide so that no matter what happens, the soul will eternally be damned. But yet, if somehow the vampire is killed, and in most movies you survive and the affection goes, whatever, you won't be eternally damned. But yeah, it's very interesting that they do that. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I can't win, says WTF. Well, all you got to do is bring up clips of directors back in the 30s and the 20s saying, "Do you got that roll of film?" I mean, Kodak. Kodak. If you go to an actual company and ask them for footage up through the 60s, they call those canisters film. So you tell them that that's all information to back up that it's film and not movie. Hey, you got that cut of that movie? Well, listen, I mean, nowadays it's different. But yeah, okay. Anyways, moving on. I wish I lived in the 20s through the 50s, but with modern medicine, of course. Exactly, Ryan. I mean, you don't want to get tetanus or some other kind of bad disease, for sure. My favorite art time period. Yeah. Well, hell, look at what you got out of the 30s. I love the 30s for film. And just art. You got the introduction of Art Deco after the turn of the century, where it was Art Nouveau there before, right after that Renaissance era and Victorian era, and it's just the art that came from there was just yeah. I love it. I love it. Let's see. Little more tinting to the film really shows how creepy it really was. Well, that's with most film, I mean, the sepia prints of like Civil War soldiers, it looks creepy. It looks eerie. It's just because of the color and the, it just colors bring out emotion. Also that it's old, the fact that it's old, and then the way people looked, and a lot of those old sepia prints, these snapshots were of dead people, and so it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Anyways, first vampire woman in film I've seen. Autocorrect, except for Alice in stage version in 1913 with Bert French laying on the ground with his throat ripped out. She's dancing around him with her wings spread. Interesting. Hey, Harry Scott, what's going on? CM, they don't call it best movie of the year. They don't call it best movie of the year. Oh, there you go, CM. Best film of the year. Best movie. Well, it depends who you're talking to, but I don't know. I had a friend that would not watch any movie unless it was modern, not even 1970s. Star Wars. I told him to basically miss out. Listen, there's a lot of people that I talk to that are like that, and I'm quite the opposite. I almost don't watch too many films 2000 and on. I stick to everything 1999 and back. I mean, it is what it is. Sometimes you can't, but again, if I don't not watch modern movies, modern film, whatever. If I hear it's good and I look at the trailer, if I think, oh, the concept, this and that, the director, I'll give it a watch. Listen, I've watched plenty of Quentin Tarantino. When it comes to horror, Hereditary was awful for the mind, but it was a great film. Midsommar, oh my God, that is such a great folk horror film, modern day. I would recommend that to anyone. It is such a good film. If you love folk horror, you gotta watch Midsommar. It's just so good. Some people refuse to watch black and white or subtitled films. Yep, I know, Ian Sharp. If it's for someone neuro-minded. Yeah, no, I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, we've seen them, so we know, and we look at them and we go, oh, you don't know what you're missing. But you say that for a lot of things. Like, my kid don't like certain food, you know what I mean? And I know it's fantastic. It tastes great. And I go, you don't know what you're missing. But maybe one day he'll watch it. I mean, eat it, whatever, or they'll watch it. But so there's also a part in this movie where Leon is about ready to die. And the doctor says she needs blood. And He says she needs your blood. So he convinces Alan Gray to give her his blood through a transfusion. And this kind of sets off a full-on nightmarish state that he goes into, because he's drained the blood, he's weak, and he stumbles out of the house and starts walking through the path in the valley, eventually falling down to a bench. And as he does so, his shadow, which you almost say that's his soul getting out of his body, but it's his shadow getting out of his body, and it walks away, and it walks over to where the doctor is, and a bunch of other things are starting to happen. All these servants and people in the village playing music, and again, the creepiness, it's all in shadows. Like there's people all playing music and stuff like that, and all you see is the shadows up on the wall. You don't see the people. You see an older woman come in and go, "Stop the noise," that's it. But the creepiest part of this part of the movie is when you walk in, or he walks in as a shadow, and he sees a coffin of him, and the pictures everywhere. It's on the posters. It's on, if you do a search for this film, you're going to see it. It's the creepiest thing I think I've ever, not that I've ever seen, but man, it's up there. It's up there in creep factor. The fact that he's laying in this coffin kind of like this, just, and then they start to put the lid on the coffin, and there's a little glass hole, or a little glass window, not a hole, a little glass. There's a glass hole. Stupid glass hole. There's a glass window for the dead victim to look out of. And again, you're looking at it going, what the hell is going on? Why is he in this coffin? Is he is in a nightmare state? We're going to find out. It's a dream, nightmarish kind of state where his shadow left, and he's seeing what delusions are in his head from fever or whatever, from who knows. It's the artistic side of the film that you have to interpret yourself. It might not mean a thing, but the way it's shot in this film, it just lends to the unnerving feeling you get when you watch it, especially when he's laying in there and the camera ends up looking out that little glass window as in his dead body, or his body that's incapacitated is looking out, and the camera's looking out, and you hear this like it's just a drilling sound going through the coffin to put this, the screws in, and they start to move the coffin, and the camera's still there, the view, the POV shot from the bottom up. It even glances past the doctor looking down, but you see the sky, you see everything above him through this coffin. And it's just, man, I tell you, this movie, it's just so scary. And then eventually the shadow of him, as the coffin starts to walk past him sitting on the bench, his shadow kind of comes back to him, his soul, his shadow, whatever. And he rises and goes to where the vampire is laying in a sarcophagus, a cemented sarcophagus, where the guy or servant or whoever from the manor is got a big thing. He's letting it go. He's going to put an iron stake through the heart of the vampire, an iron stake. And it quotes it in one of these next quotes. For who can decipher the riddle of life and death? And who can penetrate the dark secrets concealed from the light of day? For just as strange as a vampire's existence is, equally strange the manner of its demise. These dead who cannot find peace must be murdered to deliver a tormented humanity from their grip. Numerous monasteries and libraries possess in their secret accounts of how vampires have been rendered harmless in many places. In the village of Kisilova, haunted a generation ago by a vampire in the form of an old woman, the following procedure was used. At dawn, the grave was opened, and the old woman was found lying as if asleep. An iron, not wooden, but an iron stake was driven through her heart, nailing her horrid soul to the earth. She then died a true death. In this film, you see skeleton after the staking. And the curse that had laid upon herself and her victim was broken. I found that interesting because, well, the vampire didn't commit suicide. So there you go. Deliverance by the grace of our heavenly Lord. Even in these parts, tradition tells how certain areas were haunted by vampires. So yeah, I mean, I can go on and on. But basically, opening that coffin up and driving a metal stake through the heart kills this old woman vampire. And immediately, Leone, who was bitten and is being drained of blood over and over, the daughter at the manor, sits up and says, "I feel great. I feel energized," or whatever was said. And then there's this whole weird situation that goes on where you kind of get a glimpse of the old woman in the window, but that's kind of a silent era thing where they overlay images over others. So is it the soul of the vampire coming after the doctor and the peg leg guy, the two henchmen for the vampire? I don't know. That's to be interpreted by you or whoever watches it. Giselle was also tied up, and Alan Gray goes and gets her and loosens the rope and takes her out. And they kind of like walk back and, they walk off and they're fine. But it's interesting to see that even in the vampire's death, the doctor and the peg leg guy ends up dying, falling down some stairs or something like that. Weird. But the doctor, the Einstein looking character, who I got to call him Einstein, and I'll get to the chat, you guys. I will read the chat and everything. But I want to get to the end of the film because it's very interesting. So, Alan and Giselle kind of get on a boat and find their way through the fog over to the other end back to the manor to be safe. But the doctor has locked himself in this house that kind of churns, I don't know what it does, grain maybe, something like that, but it's got a water wheel, and he gets locked in this kind of gated area where above the stuff gets grinded down, and the guy who killed the vampire, who I don't know his name and they never really said it, but was the servant or the guy who kind of took charge after the Lord passed and died. He's going to take care of the doctor too. So the doctor's in, and again, it's such a great scene. Just to look upon the doctor's face that he's locked in there. He sees the gears start going and, everything. And then suddenly the grain starts grinding and it starts falling on him. And I think he knows what's going to happen. He's going to be buried alive. He's going to be buried alive by the sifting grain of whatever it is. I don't know. It could be rocks graining. I don't know. But that's what's going to end up happening with him. He's going to end up dying just from being buried alive. And it was all from the servant So they all kind of worked together to kind of kill the vampire, although this lead servant, butler guy, whoever he is this, is the hero of this. You could say Leon, not Leon, but Alan Gray played a big part in this. He was the guy, you know, figuring things out, reading the book, and trying to help Leon, and then going. He was more of an observer in this film than anything else. It really was that male servant, the older gentleman, that ended up killing the vampire and the henchman. But and that's kind of how the movie ends right there. You know, with you left going, okay, I thought it was a work of art. I thought it was great. Others say slow paced, a lot of things didn't make any sense, no plot. I love things that can be interpreted in different ways. And that's what you can do with kind of abstract art and stuff like that. And I think, I mean, you could look at it as just one full nightmare. It's Alan Gray's stay. He comes to this village, he lays down, puts his head down, falls asleep, and the entire film is a nightmare. And he's dreaming this, you know, I haven't read the books that inspired this movie or that kind of was worked into the movie. Parts of Carmilla and parts of The Room in the Dragon Volant by Sheridan Le Fanu. Look that author up because lots of good books. They smashed both of those novels together and came up with this and used it. And he just did a great job, Carl Theodore Dreyer, with putting this. And again, kind of hard to express art. I tried my best. I think you guys know I love it. This film was fantastic. I think it's right up there with when you're talking different vampire movies, especially back in the day. You know, it's right up there with Nosferatu, Dracula, and Vampyr. The only thing in this film is you don't get the vampire as a main character, really. It's atmosphere and everything else that play into the nightmarish tale that has to do with vampirism. Unbelievable. Such a great film. Ian Sharp, more of a surrealistic film. Definitely. Leon's sister, her look as well, so creepy. Yeah, Giselle, listen, if she looked creepy, she still looked kind of, she had that beauty that, you know, you see in these, you know, films back in the, listen, I love history. I love, there's a part of me that feels like my soul is attached to like the early part of the century. Why that is, I'm not 100% sure. I have ideas, but I don't discuss that here. And that would be more talked about on a paranormal show, which I have talked about on some of my paranormal shows. But definitely something with that early part of the century that I just love. That's why Vampyr is one of my personal favorites. Connie says, definitely. Edward Stewart's sexy. Yep. She was just a vamp of the town. Welcome to their nightmare. Let's see. It's a flour mill. Thank you, Paul Ham. Yeah, I mean, yeah, grain. So there you go. Grinding down the wheat. So it's a flour. Where'd you get that from? I don't, did I miss something? I mean, it makes sense. It's white powder. What else would it be? But it's a black and white film, so I couldn't really tell, and there was no names or anything to say that it was. But yeah, it makes sense that it's a flour mill. He definitely looks like Albert. The doctor seems to be helping. He got to the end because iron was considered to be effective defense against black magic. Iron was considered effective against black magic, which is more of what the lore was back in the beginning of the century. They would bring in witchcraft into a lot of the vampire lore or werewolf lore and stuff like that. So I could see that. And then eventually turning into the wooden stake or the blessed, everything became blessed by the almighty church and all that. And religious artifacts could push away the vampire, the evil. So yeah, things did end up changing, but yeah, no, that's the film. That's the film. That's a wrap. I think it's a work of art. It's fantastic. Overnight tonight, you guys, we have. Hopefully, you guys are digging the older movies. I sure am. Listen, whether they're popular or not, I'm going to. You guys know me. I'm going to talk about the films that interest me. And Paul Hamm, I do got the Blind Dead films coming up. So I do have, starting this Sunday, I will be talking about The Tombs of the Blind Dead, the first movie, 1972. So here we go with Euro horror. Even though Giallo, did I miss something? Let's see. Sorry if I missed something. I'm looking now. Janine Peterson, welcome to Level 1 support. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm a psycho. Hi, guys. What's going on? Even though, Paul Hamm, Euro horror and Euro horror, European horror, is I would consider Giallo part of that European horror, right? I mean, am I wrong? Giallo is, but this is a different kind of aspect to the Giallo genre. I think Giallo is just totally of its own, I think it's its own subgenre altogether. So this Euro horror, it sounds so funny every time I say it. Everybody says I got a Cleveland accent. It's like when it's code outside, I say it's code outside, CODE. It's code. Yeah, it's just something. Yes, it is. Yeah. I figured, Paul, I am, but I am diving into the stuff that you talked about, and I am hitting the Blind Dead films, and hopefully, I'm gonna love it. They look great, but who the heck knows? $4.99 super chat from Connie Clary. Thank you very much, Connie. I appreciate that. Appreciate everything everybody does. Make sure you hit that thumbs up before you guys go. CM, thank you. Dino Mods, be well. Peace and blessings. Thank you, CM. I'm a Psycho, by the way. Will the Dr. X live stream still on? I love that film. No, I'm a Psycho because I'm not going to redo the stream, and I took the stream down because listen, every now and then, well, yeah, see, I'm not even going to get into it again, but yeah, there were issues in the stream, and I just made it private, and I'm not, yeah, it's done. I love Dr. X. Listen, Fay Ray, Lionel Atwell. I mean, yeah. At will. It doesn't. That wasn't the best, but it was a damn good film. A lot of the scientific instruments and the way they do. I thought, well, the Wax Museum. I think that's going to be an even better film. But listen, the Dr. X was a fantastic film, without a doubt. Thank you, Harry Scott. Don't forget the thumbs up and ring that bell. Ring that bell. So much different on VHS than some of the new versions out there. Edward Stewart. Yeah. I'd be interested in checking out the different types of versions, but I went with the Criterion because they do that. They do everything perfect. I mean, well, not perfect, but they get the best prints and they put together the films in a way that they should be presented. They're very professional and they know what they're doing. Paul Hamm, Wax Museum is tops. Yeah. Can't wait for Mad Love. Oh yeah. Wait, Mad Love, or is it M. I think it's M that I got scheduled. Yes, M. Peter Lorre, Fritz Lang, 1931. Oh, Mad Love, 1935. Peter Lorre. I don't even know what I got planned in the future. March 29th. Yes, yes. Mad Love, 1935. Listen, I can't wait to talk about Peter Lorre. I threw together Lux Radio Theater last night. Some people like it. Tonight, you will get some shows you haven't heard before. Look at the timestamps. It's a night of mystery. So there's all mystery. It's a mixed bag of mystery in there. So look at the timestamps. Look at the description. Some really cool ones, starting right off with the new one at the very beginning. Hopefully you guys enjoy that and like that. Hello all. Hope everyone is well. Thank you, Colonel Crypto. Both. Yep. Yeah. 9:01. I'm going to have this an hour long tonight. So I do appreciate everybody, and I'm going to get ready for the overnight tonight. And I will see you guys when I see ya, right? Much love. Hi, boy donut.